Welcome to Grow Organically, the podcast where we host candid discussions with wealth management and financial pros. Each episode, we break down factors that drive growth at wealth management firms and how organizations can continue to be forward thinkers in today's competitive landscape. Grow Organically is brought to you by Catchlight. You can access all our podcasts, including show notes and other resources to keep learning, at catchlight.ai. Dan Gilmartin is the host of Grow Organically and is the head of marketing at Catchlight.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm your host, Dan Gilmartin. I am very excited for today's guest. Crystal Mathis is the CMO and Partner at Signature FD. Prior to Signature, she led communications at Cardlytics, and before that, she managed B2B and B2C accounts for Porter Novelli. She's been recognized as a 40 under 40 by the Atlanta Business Chronicle and was recently nominated for CMO of the Year by Wealth Management Magazine. In addition to her 9-to-5, she volunteers for a number of worthy causes. Very excited to have you on the program. Crystal, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in. Love to have you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and tell us a little bit about your path to wealth management.
Sure. Yeah. So I always say I cut my teeth on the agency side. And, if there's any people who are just starting out, I highly recommend it. It just provides a foundation that gets you used to working hard and understanding various industries and understanding, different things. Gives you a good layout of what you might be interested in for the long term. So I cut my teeth on that side, primarily working in the B2B space. But I always also say there becomes sort of an inflection point around that 6, maybe 7-year mark of, am I going to stay on the agency side or am I going to go corporate? And there's no wrong answer. Really just depends on what you want out of your career. I decided to go on the corporate side and went over to an organization called Cardlytics, a fintech company out of Atlanta.
Know them well.
Oh man, it was such a fun time, and they were about to go public. So I got to be a part of leading out on the comm strategy around them going public on NASDAQ. So it was a super fun and just interesting thing that I got to be a part of. And through that, I got really interested in obviously markets and what does that look like? But more so, I was now starting to get to an echelon within my career where I was understanding the other pieces of the wealth journey. Salary is just one base, but, equity and stock options and starting to get a good handle on those things. Recruiter happens to reach out, and I always recommend taking the call, even if you're not looking. And I wasn't looking, but I went ahead and took the call and found that Signature FD shared a lot of the same values that I had around what wealth really is and what wealth truly means. And there was a little, when I was leaving, a few people were like, it's a highly regulated industry. You're not going to do a lot of fun things. And it's interesting. I actually find this industry, as regulated as it is, one of the industries where you get to do more fun things. And I think that's because money is so personal. And there's stories that can be woven into that I don't think you can do in any other industry. So it's been a really fun journey.
Awesome. Well, love the background. I know some folks at Cardlytics, so we have some interesting overlap there. And
Nice.
Now we find ourselves in the wealth management space. Tell me a little bit about the makeup of your team. We talked about the importance of agencies, and I know you're working with a few agencies, but love to just get a sense, and you can share with others about what your team looks like and how you're constructing it.
Yeah. So I do fundamentally believe that when you're bringing in any, what I call junior staffers or people who are going to be reporting to you, that you want to have a structure that is a little bit more grounded and a little bit more formed. You have to understand that certain levels, they might not be able to see the vision, and that can feel really jarring and be really hard for somebody who's still sort of in the middle of navigating their career. I did not bring on anyone in the beginning. I inherited a young woman who had been with the organization for quite some time. And she was on my team for a bit. We did end up transitioning her over to the client care side, where she's excelling and doing wonderfully. And then we just used agencies for a while. And so agencies I treat them as an extension of my team. And part of that is because I come from the agency side, and your agency is only as good as your internal person. And so if you can treat them as a true partner as a real extension of your team, you can get a different type of strategic guidance, I believe. And so that's what they were. We hired a PR firm, and we hired a project management organization that we worked with for a bit to help just lay the groundwork. That was my first priority. Needed to get the foundation of messaging, site, drip campaigns, that kind of stuff that you want to have before you start diving deeply into lead gen funnels and growth and things of that nature. Once I felt like we had a really good foundation there, that's when I started to look to hiring someone. And basically, the way the team is fleshed out is I have one person who is internal. That person focuses on what I call the ground level strategy. So we have a top level and a ground level. I believe that growth comes from both, and you need to have both supports. And what that looks like is at the top level, we are doing brand and PR, CEO, C-suite bench, that type of thing to draw the people in. But you do not want to cannibalize what works. And what has worked and what continues to work for Signature FD is our advisors. They are at the ground level doing the block and tackle of bringing in business. And so we hired a person to support them in their endeavors, whether that's events or programming or lateral from a sales enablement perspective. All of that is helping nurture growth at the ground level. So then that way you've got the support coming in from an inbound perspective and a brand footprint perspective, making it easier for the advisors to draw in people. But then at the ground level, I've got a person who's supporting them for whatever they need. And then from an agency perspective, we also have a PR firm. And then once I felt like we were ready, which was a couple of years ago, we started to enlist a growth partner around digital lead gen.
And I think, if I recall correctly, when you joined Signature FD, there wasn't much of a marketing foundation. So in the short time that you've been there, you've really built that foundation. You put together a wonderful strategy and created a group of folks, a foundation for how you're going to build that strategy. So the team and the talent clearly, number one in getting that strategy off the ground. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about tech. Tech's so important in getting done what we need to get done, implementing the strategy, specifically on the marketing front. There's so much that we have to do, but we'd love to have you talk a little bit about your tech stack. Tell us, what are you using? CRM, marketing automation, and perhaps even get into a couple workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually inherited my tech stack. I have not outsourced, and it's actually worked pretty well. So for our CRM, we use Salesforce. I think a lot of organizations use that. And then for our marketing automation, we use HubSpot. And we have those two programs talking to each other in a two-way sync. So information that comes in through our site, which is driven with HubSpot landing pages, syncs with Salesforce and vice versa. And so we can always have that kind of two-way communication happening. And then we added recently Catchlight from an AI prospecting tool perspective. And so that one was a new add. And we've just added that this year. But again, I like to, if somebody's thinking of what they need to do with their tech stack, I like to start with, use what you have. And kind of figure out how's that working? Is it working? If you're inheriting, to your point, coming into a business that's fully formed, but building a department within that, there's a lot of learning that needs to happen first before you start to just add on different things. But that's our current stack.
I like that you talked about the sync between your CRM and your marketing automation platforms. Super important. Could you give us a sense of one or two workflows that you have that is perhaps powered by marketing but leveraged by the advisors in terms of their outreach and the business development function at
Sure.
Signature FD?
Sure. So we have, it's a couple things. I'm going to take a step back and sort of talk about how we got here, because it was an evolution. So when I came in, we had a newsletter that went out. God, don't quote me. I don't even remember what the cadence was. I think it was once a week, but it wasn't really a newsletter. It was more like a kind of investment brief, I guess, if you will. And we would send that out across to a certain portion of clients who had enrolled. And this is common. This is totally common. A lot of people with entrepreneurial types of businesses tend to allow advisors or enable them to act as sort of singular business units. So one of the things I needed to do was figure out how we roll that up into the actual brand while still allowing the advisors to keep their flexibility. And so one of our flows is, one, we instituted a weekly newsletter. What it does is it does come from each advisor. So every advisor, it comes from their name and it goes to their client. We have that automated throughout HubSpot. That took, I'll be frank, a lot of cleanup. If you have people sort of operating as independently, you've got to come in and kind of do a lot of cleanup before you can get to this automated state. But we cleaned that up, and now that is a weekly newsletter that we send out to all clients and signed in prospects. And it still allows for the advisor to have that one-to-one communication. If a person responds, they respond to the advisor. It's still going to their email. It looks like it's coming.
So that's not coming from marketing ad
Correct.
or info
Correct.
ad. This is coming from the advisor.
It's coming
Great
from
job.
the
Love that.
person.
Love
Because
that.
that's the face. That's who they know. And so that's one of our flows. And then from a prospect perspective, we do have a couple of lead gen tools and drip campaigns that correspond to that. One of those is a printout type of workbook that people can kind of start to get acquainted with our brand and our language and how we think about wealth, while also starting to articulate their goals for themselves. The idea being it triggers some thoughts and questions that then encourages them to raise their hand and schedule a meeting. We did that for the first year, and then we pivoted in the following years to a what we call GPGL questionnaire. We believe you activate wealth in 4 pillars: grow, protect, give, and live. But what this questionnaire allows us to do is get a sense of where the person is in their grow, protect, give, and live journey, because we do believe pillars take different precedences depending on where you are in life. So they start to get, the lead who's coming into the system starts to get a little bit of an understanding of, oh, you know what, I'm in a protect phase right now. That's kind of interesting. I didn't think that. Those are some questions I have, while also subtly getting them acquainted with the brand. Oh, they kind of think a little bit differently about wealth. All of it is to give them a sense of how we think and how we operate. And then they enter into a drip that gives them information and content that we already have, that we just kind of recycle and reuse. So it's not a heavy lift. These are all automated, but it gives them some information around their specific GPGL blueprint, and then content corresponding to what that GPGL blueprint is. So getting them acquainted with the brand while also nurturing them and encouraging them to raise their hand.
And building that relationship, which is crucial in the advisor client world. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. So we talked about team, we've talked about tech. Let's get into some detail here.
Yeah.
And talk about lead gen. You sort of started to talk about it a little bit, but love to hear what you guys are doing, tools and tactics on the lead gen front. What have you tried? What's working for you?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what's worked, what's not worked. Let's get into it right now.
Yeah.
So I took a little bit of time before we started to endeavor on lead gen purposely. Again, I wanted to build that foundation.
Smart.
When we made the first step into it, it was 2022. And when I say we did a small test case, very, very small. I just wanted to see, will people within our target audience enter into a funnel within our site? You know, if we make a compelling lead gen, will they even come in? If we build it, will they come? Let's just see. So we did. And we learned some things. We learned, yes, people will come into the funnel. Yes, we can get a good quantity of leads. Okay, all right, let's keep this going. So in the following year, we upped it a little bit more and got some more learnings and said, okay, we need somebody to call every lead, right? And we don't have a person who's doing that. So
Like a BDR, you mean?
we did
Okay.
not use that. We actually used a call center. We just found a call center and said, let's just try having a person call every lead. And we did. And what we learned in that was, all right, it's great to have somebody calling every lead, but we really need somebody who's at least somewhat familiar with the industry and our brand.
Mhm.
Less a contractor, but a person who actually knows us a bit more. So the conversation's a little bit more easy. So we just instituted that this year and it's going really, really well. Some of the
Nice.
tactics that we've used, yes, we have done pay per click. And then there's other organizations slightly similar where you don't really pay for the lead, but you're more so paying for once that lead has been vetted. So it's still kind of paying for the lead, but you don't actually pull out the cost until someone on the partnerships end has said, yes, they definitely have these assets.
You've got a full spectrum there
Yes.
from search, pure top of funnel,
Mm-hmm.
to paid leads,
Mm-hmm.
to what sounds like paid qualified,
Mm-hmm.
pre-qualified leads.
Yep.
Is that a pretty good
I would say that's a
synopsis?
good mix.
Yeah.
Now, what we learned, now this is over time.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of where we've netted in time. So we really liked the pay per lead. What we kind of found within that was you need a team that's really dedicated to calling all of those that come in. Speed to
Right.
lead really matters because they're getting multiple choices at one time. And so for us, we felt like, okay, this might not be the most appropriate for our organization, given that we also still have a fair amount of other types of lead flow. So we kind of removed the paid per lead. We kept the pay per the close, essentially is kind of what I call those. And and I'm saying this from the perspective of we did a lot of testing, A/B testing around what worked and what didn't work before we kind of got to this space. What we have found works for us specifically is a lot of these search terms like wealth manager in name city here can be very expensive.
Right.
And
Sure.
if you don't have that type of budget, which a lot of organizations don't, where you can get really smart is how you target. So maybe instead of targeting around wealth management, Atlanta, let's say that, we've gone after things that are a little less searched, but are applicable to our audience. So donor advised fund. That's not a normal term that a lot of people would know, but our audience will. And so if we go after that particular term, it's a little bit cheaper and we're still hitting where we want to go. So like I threw a lot out there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, I want to dig in here. I mean, so pay-per-click search, paid leads, qualified leads, within the sort of pay-per-click model, it sounds like search is performing a little bit better than social, pay-per-lead not performing as well as pay-per-qualified lead.
Yeah.
Would love to hear just, as a marketer, we test things. If we're not testing, then we've either figured it out and we're just doing a great job, or we're not doing our jobs really well.
Yeah.
But would love to hear, just pulling the thread on some of the things we just talked about, search outperforming social. Any other strategies you've tested where you've learned something perhaps you didn't think you were going to find?
We had some theories around based off of the lead flow we were getting from some of our testing efforts that the specific communities that seemed to be more in tune with getting into the funnel and actually taking an action were execs and business owners. And so we decided to do some very hyper targeted campaigns with landing pages in accordance to each campaign around the life inflection points of that particular audience. So an executive might be starting a new job, or have a new benefits package, or a female executive might be having a baby.
Mhm.
A business owner might be trying to figure out some tax breaks, or they might be selling their business. Some of those kind of things that are happening that create a trigger. We started targeting around that. And it's been really fascinating. What I've found is we will draw more executives. And again, this is like, I literally was doing some of this assessing last night. We will draw more executives, but the close, the revenue per close is higher on business owners.
Mm.
And where I'm that's a learning, but where I've not figured out how we need to apply it is we have communities across board. So we call them client communities, but they're basically client niches. We have signature exec, we have signature entrepreneur, signature women, different ones. And we're trying to figure out what that right formula is to be able to digitally scale up the lead flow for each community where we have not. I'm still doing some data looking.
Yeah. Well, let's talk data. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
things that you had said to me recently is, and I wholeheartedly agree, that marketing is an investment. It's non-transactional, and you're there to invest for long-term returns.
Yeah.
So thinking of the ROI on some of the campaigns you're doing, the speed to lead on the pay-per lead thing, talk to us a little bit about what you're measuring. What does success look like? You just mentioned revenue per close, which I think is a fascinating metric to measure. But walk us through a little bit about what you're measuring and why.
Yeah, and it's a little misleading too, because I actually do not measure myself with revenue.
Okay.
So it's fascinating. I'll talk about that for a second. So one of the things that marketers need to always be very, very clear and transparent with the rest of the organization around is that marketing does not control the close. We can give you tools for the close, we can bring in the leads, we can target effectively, we can do those things, but we cannot control what happens once in that room. So that is why I've been very clear to not be measured on revenue. But it doesn't mean it's not a thing that I look at, because that's intelligence that I can give to my agency. Oh, you know what? Like maybe we need to double down a little bit on the business owners. While less of them are coming in, the ones that are coming in are closing with a higher revenue. That might be kind of interesting. Let's take a look at that. What I actually measure and actually report on, and I'll take it all the way to when I'm actually doing planning because it corresponds. So when I'm doing the planning for the year, I break it down by goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. You said GHOST, which is
Yes, love it.
So your goal is an overarching thing that you want to do. I want to generate leads, inbound lead flow. That's the goal. The objective is where you get down to what you're measuring. So let's say I want to generate 50 qualified leads. Now you have a number that you're going against. Then your strategy is going to be, again, kind of taking it up to that upper level. We're going to do digital marketing, or we're going to do events. And then your tactic is getting down to brass tacks of, okay, here's the campaigns we're going to run on these platforms, getting really nitty gritty. I share that with the rest of the senior leadership team and the advisors as well, get their input. Hey, what are y'all seeing? What's out there? Tell me a little bit more. Does this feel right? And once everybody is aligned, then that is what we're marching towards for the year. I then measure every quarter, and I send that report out to the team. And we measure by looking at things as a story. So you're taking it down almost you're literally doing the marketing funnel within a reporting structure. So I would say, if you're looking at the awareness, that funnel, my report says X amount of people saw our brand, whether it was articles or paid articles or whatever. They saw our brand. That's impressions. That's what I'm measuring, actual eyeballs. And then I'm going to say, all right, out of those people, X amount of those people came to our site. So now I'm looking at new visitors to our site, returning visitors, that type of thing. And then out of those people, X amount entered our funnel. So now I'm looking at actual leads. How many people came into the system? And then out of those people, X amount were qualified. So now I'm looking at targeting. Is our percentage of targeting appropriate? Are we getting a little too much junk or a little too much unqualified? And then from that, and again, I am not measured against this, but I do like to report, okay, from that, this amount closed and that generated X amount of revenue. And you're telling the full funnel story, because a lot of times people, to your point, think that marketing is transactional. It is not. It is a long game. It is not sales. And so there is a nurturing. I've had people enter our funnel and take up to 2 years to take an action. So you have to be able to measure all of these pieces. Otherwise, you don't know that you're tracking towards success. It can feel very defeating when you're looking at maybe a smaller revenue number than what you thought. But when you
Right.
start to look at it in the story, then you see, oh, we're actually making progress. And here's where we need to double down. And there's other pieces I look at from what pages were most important, where were, what pages were most clicked. So I can start to get down to what's the content that's going to be best for our drip campaigns when we update them.
Awesome. Measurement key. I love the GHOST framework.
Yeah.
I've used that throughout my career as well.
Yep.
That's awesome. So last question,
Yeah.
Crystal, and I ask all of my guests this question,
Okay.
and that is, if you knew then what you know now, and you're in the same role, you're CMO at Signature FD, you know that you knew then what you know now, what would you be telling yourself about what you should be doing to drive organic growth for the firm?
I'm sure a lot of people have heard it. It's well known. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I wish I had heeded that when I started.
Mm,
So you've heard me say that there's an importance to honor what has come before you and what has and me being the young and strappy and ready to go, I think I was so focused on wanting to get results that I didn't take the amount of time, and I had to rectify this at some point within the year that I started. But I wish I had done it on the front end, of really took the time to sit down with the advisors and figure out what's really the challenges. What are you really
mm.
faced with? Tell me what's really out there, because you all are doing a great job. You've grown this firm without a marketing department really very, very well. Clearly something has worked. I'm not in here to fix something. I'm in here to scale. And that requires team. Growth isn't just paid. It is referrals. It is organic. It is all partnerships, all of those things working in a universe. And if I had, really sat down to dig into that's what I would tell younger Crystal is, take your time. There is no rush. This is a long game, and you're not heeding that warning yourself.
Marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Crystal, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you for all the insights and knowledge that you shared with the audience. Appreciate you having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And so that wraps up this episode. If you'd like, please subscribe, hit one of the links below, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Organically podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit catchlight.ai, where you can access all our podcasts, including show notes and other resources to keep learning. This podcast was produced by Catchlight Insights, LLC. It is for informational and educational purposes only. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer or recommendation of any securities and is not intended to provide tax, legal, or investment advice. The views expressed are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of Catchlight or its affiliates, and are as of the date indicated, based on the information available at that time, and may change based on market or other conditions. Catchlight does not assume any duty to update any of the information. Catchlight and other third parties mentioned in the podcast are independent entities and not affiliated. Catchlight does not endorse any investment advisor or provide advice or recommendations to any prospective or existing client of an investment advisor as to the selection or retention of that investment advisor. The information is not intended for any person or entity in any jurisdiction where the distribution or use of such information would be contrary to local law. Third-party trademarks referenced herein are the property of the respective owners. All others are the property of Catchlight Insights, LLC, copyright 2024 Catchlight Insights, LLC. All rights reserved.